Hello, and if you're listening to the audio, welcome back to this episode of Five Alarm Task Force. If you're joining us on the video on YouTube, welcome, and we're so glad to have you. My name is Steve Green. I'm your host. Happy to be here with you and happy to have you here with us. My guests today, one is a former guest, one is a brand new guest. Nevertheless, they work together on a project and also are going to be discussing their own books. That one has come out soon, one is coming out very shortly. So my guests are Bradley Davidson and Chief Arjuna George, and they're both from our great neighbor and friend up north in Canada. And I'll tell you about Brad Davidson first. Brad has been a previous guest way before we started. He was really one of my greatest supporters in those early days, helping me out long before we started video. And I appreciate that, Brad, and was always backing me up on social media too. It meant a great deal to me. He retired in 2021 with 4 decades of service in the fire world. He currently serves as an advisor for the Canadian Association of Fire Investigators. He's the past regional director for the Canadian Association of Fire Investigators. And he's the past director for Volunteer Firefighters of Canada. As a consultant, he was part of a project in Saskatchewan, auditing fire stations and then providing recommendations to the Saskatchewan government via the WCB for Firefighter Cancer Prevention program. He is still a firefighter health, safety, and wellness advocate and promotes these in any fashion he can. And he is authoring a new book of his memoirs, sharing the tragedies and triumphs of serving in the fire service. And that's something, you've got a couple of years or more behind you, you know that's what our lives are about. That also shares the loss of one of his personal firefighting friends due to brain cancer. After 3 times he had had surgery, and includes a chapter on cancer prevention. He was a scholarship recipient 3 times. First one was for FDIC Honeywell DuPont Kevlar Scholarship. He returned the following year as an FDIC instructor. The second scholarship was for FRI IAFC FDSOA Scholarship and took training as a fire department health and safety officer. And the third one, he was awarded the first ever IFC Alan V. Brunacini Lifelong Learner Scholarship recipient. Doctor's orders, unfortunately, were not allowed him to travel at that time for this award. The CAFC also has invited him to take facilitated training in Ottawa for the first responder R2MR Road to Mental Readiness program. And we'll provide you with his LinkedIn page where it lists all his professional certifications and qualifications. Also joining us today is Chief Arjuna George. He is a trauma-informed resilience coach and TRE provider, which we'll explain when he's going to be speaking, specializing in performance coaching for burnout prevention and recovery for fire chiefs and fire leaders. Arjuna retired in 2021 as fire chief, Salt Spring Island Fire Rescue, after 24 years of service. He is a certified professional coach specializing in fire chief officer stress mastery and resilience. He has helped fire chiefs and officers across the country be emotionally intelligent leaders. He is a family man, entrepreneur, author, and retired fire chief with a passion for helping others, leading healthier and happier lives. He is now the principal owner of Silver Arrow Coaching and Consulting, specializing in fire chief coaching and training. He graduated from Royal Roads University in 2022 with a graduate certificate in executive coaching. He is a regular contributor for Canadian Firefighter Magazine, Firefighting in Canada, and is the author of the book Burnt Around the Edges, a guide to mastering stress and surviving burnout. Gentlemen, welcome to Five Alarm Task Force. It is an honor and privilege to have you both with us this morning.
Same. It's an honor to be here with both of you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
well, Brad, we're going to start with you since you're the returnee. And I was thrilled to hear, as I was saying with the chief before we started, I was thrilled to hear that you were coming out with your book. And you happen to note in just a little line, oh, I was helped by Chief Arjuna George from the Vancouver area. Well, shortly after that, I also heard from, that's when I heard from Bill Dungy, who's going to be one of our speakers at our upcoming webinar, who talks about professional and personal resilience in our daily lives. And I told him that I'm having you on. He goes, oh, I know those guys. So I'm glad. And now I have Chief Vernon Hilla is going to be on next week out of Toronto. So we're getting across the provinces. We're working from Ontario. You're in Manitoba. We're getting out towards the Ocean Islands, just west of Vancouver. I'm glad we're getting the opportunity to share a lot of the information from our brothers and sisters in Canada with our listeners around the world. We're lucky that we've had listeners in up to 42 countries was the most we've had so far across 7 continents. But I'm still working hard trying to get the weather station, exploration station down in Antarctica to tune in at least to one podcast, so I can say I covered all seven continents. But Brad, we've gone over your resume, but I'd like to hear more, and I think I want our listeners and viewers to hear more about your book and what finally, I've written now. I have a book, and the Chief has. What was that impetus that brought you to sit down and write your book, please?
Well, I'd have to say the impetus was learning of Chief Arjuna's book, and I ordered it and read it, and I thought, man, this is bang on. Wellness and resilience in the fire service. Experts can make complex problems simple. And in Arjuna's book, he breaks it down into a easy to understand level. And I read it and totally bought into it. And then Arjuna offered people that buy his book a free coaching session. So I thought, why not? Like, even after I think I know a few things, if there's a class on the same subject, I'll go just to see, for instance, if I can learn just a little something else. Like I did that with the sprinkler systems a few years ago. And I ended up coaching the instructor in that case, but I still learn things, and I'm always open to learning new things. So after I read the book and I totally bought into it and endorsed it, Arjuna and I were texting back and forth, and he said, I'll offer you a free hour coaching session. So I welcomed that, and Arjuna and I got together, did that, and Arjuna asked me, I mentioned that I was writing a book, and he said, well, what's holding you back? Because at that time it was just files on the computer, an assortment of them, and I had to, it was funny. He asked me the direct question, what's holding you back? And I thought, well, nothing. And he encouraged me. He said, Brad, just get it out, just dump it on paper, and once it's all in, once you get it all out, then you can cut and paste, edit, whatever you have to do. And that's exactly what I did. And it didn't take me very long because all the material was on my computer in files, basically. And I just organized them in a story fashion, being it memoirs.
That's great. And, I think people often guess that an author has to be, 17, has to have 17 degrees and all this stuff to express themselves, when all it takes is a pencil and paper or a computer and just sitting down and letting your heart lead your fingers to type and to write. One thing I would like to say for both of you, and Brad, you and I are a little bit older than the Chief. So you and I kind of know that back in our early days, we had no Firefighter Behavioral Health Initiative. The Behavioral Health Initiative consisted 3 words: suck it up.
Right.
Now we recognize PTSD.
Right.
And we also know that retirement is difficult for a lot of us when we retire after a long career. I got knocked out after 8 years, but my being knocked out was because of an injury. And and I think I've talked to one of my other guests about the concept that I think we also have to realize when and we've seen this with our nonprofit when we started in the middle of the pandemic, is that and our goal is only one thing. It's our motto is one family, one mission, first responders helping each other. So we send cash through it via check to firefighters and or their families in dire need. Yet probably 95% of the money we've sent out has gone to surviving members of families of our brothers that we lost who made the ultimate sacrifice. But when you love doing this job and you're disabled, you're suddenly disabled and you can't do that job anymore, that also takes a very heavy mental toll. So when if you retire after 20, 25, 30 years, 40 years, it's wonderful because you've had this really amazing full experience and you've seen every aspect of the job. But those who get knocked out permanently because of a disability struggle. I know I have. I've struggled over the years, and this podcast has been one of the ways for me to get through that. And that's what pushed me when a bunch of the friends on social media, on Twitter, when I first started Twitter, to promote the TV show we were trying to sell in those days. There was a lot of support there. And I said, well, Jiminy Crickets, I didn't realize anybody cared about somebody who had to retire early because of an injury. And that's what led me to the podcast. And this has been the catharsis for me. So I hope that in both your teachings, you'll use that factoid as well, is that, it's not just the PTSD that a lot of us deal with. I was just telling a friend that last weekend who was here visiting of the worst call that I ever had in those 8 years. And that was with somebody involved in a rollover pin-in with fire. And we got there in time to get him out alive, lived for 3 days, but that first experience of dealing with that. And so my buddy and I, this kid who's still my best friend today, 40 some years later, every time we're together, he'll be down here on the 27th. He always comes down to visit. He's up in Gainesville. If he's going to be within an hour drive or hour and a half drive. And we'll go out to lunch, but we'll always talk about that call every time we're together. Not on the phone, but every time, because we both know we need it. But it was the driver and the two of us. We didn't even have an officer. I had to climb up in the right seat myself. Driver said, "Get up here, Steve," and we're going. Chief was screaming on the radio. So I think that both of you are tackling such important topics. I'm so proud to have you here because it's not, as we said before we went on the air, we're not just doing the same old leadership stuff. There are 1,000 books on leadership in the fire service there. But a lot of people still don't want to talk about what we go through and the mental and the physical yo-yos that we deal with. So in your book, Brad, how are you, and when you counsel, because you're out there presenting, how do you tell our brothers and sisters, how do you help them to understand what may be lying ahead and how to face it, how to deal with it?
Well, that's a good question. In the fire service, when we're young and we think we're bulletproof, we sign up with, riding in the truck and kicking down the front door, both of which I used to love to do.
Yeah.
But when you sign up, you're not necessarily introduced to the tragic outcomes.
Right.
And firefighters have to prepare themselves to see that and deal that. And as Arjuna will probably explain later, a way of grounding yourself so that you can keep your mental health to go to the next call. And sometimes it's not just one incident. Sometimes it's a steady stream of tragic calls. And the way it was described to me was You can go to a tragic call and I think it doesn't affect you. But in the meantime, you've thrown a chain around your neck, and then you go to the next one. Don't, and you try not to think about it, so you stop it. You suck it up, right? And you throw another chain on your neck, and pretty soon, coping skills that you may have been using don't work anymore because you're trying to function uh, at high speed kind of thing, like we do on calls. But you've got all these chains around your neck, and eventually it affects your resilience. So you're still responding, but you're not bouncing back mentally as well.
That's a good point. Chief, you and I talked a little bit about this before we went on the air as well. We've shared some of those feelings. How did you see it? How were you able to bring yourself as a chief officer with 2 decades of service behind you? How did you all of a sudden? How were you able to admit to yourself? As my dad may rest in peace, and I've used this before. My dad says, you can say anything you want, but the guy in the mirror, he knows every secret. He knows everything about you, whether you lie, whether you fib, whether you did this when you did that. That person knows every single thing. So that person in my mirror knew how much being out of the fire service bothered me. How do we admit to ourselves without thinking that, oh, we're weak, we're wusses if we can't be that? How do we do it, Chief? And how did you, as you incorporated this into your book, and this book is a lot of quite a bit of it is biographical, correct? Right.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Biographical, and then also just tips and tricks of how
Right.
to recover if you're going through stress.
Right.
Yeah, as another good question. I think for myself, I was lying to myself for 10 years, ignoring the signs and symptoms that I was burning out. So honestly, there was a higher power that did something to me that day, because on June 23rd, 2020, I made a phone call to my boss that I was no longer coming to work. I'm taking a sick leave, stress leave. And that just came out of my mouth. It wasn't planned. I didn't talk to my wife, my kids. I didn't talk to myself about it. Something just came out of my mouth and said, if I don't do this today, I'm probably not going to wake up tomorrow, kind of thing, right? So there was something there. I don't know what it was, but something made me make that phone call. And so looking back on it now, I really truly think that I'm trying to live my life as authentic as possible. If I have a feeling that comes on, an emotion that comes on, I'm going to feel it. If I have, like, one of my biggest emotions that I hid for a long time was anger. I never showed anger. And that is a pretty aggressive and potent, toxic emotion to bottle up in your body.
Yeah.
So for me, bottling up that anger was, and now I express it in a productive and professional way, respectful way, but now I actually use anger to move forward in life versus it just sitting and stewing in my body.
That's really a great way of putting it. I never saw it that way, but we do know, especially down here, sadly in the state of Florida, a relatively, I shouldn't say it's relatively small. It's really not. It's the second largest department in Orange County, which is Central Florida, right around the Orlando area, the Disney capital of the Southeast. Lost their second firefighter to suicide in a month, just a week ago. And I think it was in the, I don't remember, it was one of the news blasts from one of the trades at the end. I think it was maybe over the weekend or on Friday, talked about that the chief felt there were no symptoms. They spoke with other colleagues. Nobody had expressed any problems, etc. And I think you both really just said something very important, because I think we all did it, which is we all did bottle up a lot of the stuff that was affecting us. We just didn't want to admit that it was affecting us. And that, for me, I was a volunteer. So I was still working 7 days a week, worked about 60 hours a week. And yet it was very important to me this was the first time I was doing it, nowhere near my home area in the greater Boston area. And we just don't know what to expect. Our chief, and we were very lucky, one of the daytime guys, because we were a volunteer department, we had like 5 paid people, including 3 caretakers. Their job was 24 on, 48 off, make sure they get the first apparatus out whenever it had to go. And then the chief was paid, and the captain was paid, the mechanic was paid, and our fire prevention officer. That was it. Every regular firefighter we were all volunteers. And I wanted to soak up as much as I could. And so I spent a lot of time with my wife's permission. We didn't have kids then. We were only married a couple of years at that point. She was working 2 jobs also. And I just thrust myself into it. And I really enjoyed what I was learning. And I guess the first point for me was when I had to do my first CPR. And we lost a patient. And I was really upset because, I thought I had done everything right. And, in the class, I had taken several CPR classes over the years before I became a firefighter, because I was very active with the Red Cross in my hometown outside Boston. And I guess I was afraid that if I expressed any weakness, I'd be thrown out. And so I kept it in and dealt with it on my own. And I probably took some out of it on my wife. I did not bottle my anger. And I might have been, I wouldn't say I wasn't angry with her. I was just frustrated. I think that's what a lot of us deal with, is frustration. We'll work without even thinking about doing a 90-minute extrication, as long as that patient gets out okay. But if we lose them during the extrication, that hits us like just having the jaws squeeze our skulls together. So how do we teach those watching us today and listening to us? How do we begin to share with them that it's okay to say, this isn't good for me. I'm having problems. And to admit it without feeling like they're going to be considered a wuss, or I'm disappointing everybody who was so proud of me becoming a firefighter, and now they're going to think I never could cut it. I can't do it. How do we do that, Brad?
Well, I think the biggest part is reaching out. Being able to reach out. Maybe it's going to be a more senior person on the department, and they have to new members have to realize you can do everything right and still have a bad outcome. I relate back to, we had a string of fatals that I was at as a rookie, and we were even criticized at times. Quite vocally, because it was a bad outcome. But we knew enough from fire behavior that we couldn't have changed the outcome. So I think firefighters have to know, especially the young ones, that you can do everything right and still have a bad outcome. And I guess that's about it for me. But.
Okay. Chief?
Yeah, I would definitely go on to that as well, and say access to those people. That's kind of why I started coaching, was because I myself as a fire chief found a huge gap in support for that chief level officer. And so that's why I started a niche company that goes down to just fire chiefs and fire officers through Canada and North America. because I really feel that they are the ones who, I'm not saying firefighters don't experience it, but they have a little bit more support than the chief, just from my personal experience. And just having access to somebody they can bounce off ideas, very confidential manner, a safe spot to talk to somebody. That was kind of why I really wanted to start coaching, because my view of coaching is moving people forward in life, not so much counseling where we're dealing with the past. We're trying to get past that and moving into the future. But I think podcasts like yourself and other conversations out there really is what's going to turn the tables. If we are able to just have this as a regular conversation, weekly, daily, monthly, yearly, I think that's going to set the stage for those new firefighters coming in, that it's okay to speak up, to be vulnerable, to be emotional if you have to be. If anything that comes up, you're human. You're not a robot. We should be allowed to feel those and be safe in our environment to feel those. Obviously, the fire service has a special breed of kind of people who can withstand seeing that trauma day after day after day. But one incident is a rock in your backpack or a chain on your neck, like Brad said. You can only do so much of that. You can only have so many chains around your neck or so many rocks in your backpack, that even the strongest people, and I felt I was a pretty resilient person myself, I felt I was doing a pretty job of my own self-care. But obviously, looking back on it now, I wasn't doing exactly what I should be doing to live a healthy, thriving life. So I think having the conversation is my answer there, is having the conversation, just keeping this conversation going, and slowly itching away at that stigma that we don't talk about this stuff. I think we have to talk about it. That's so important.
Right. You brought up a good point too, and that's the fact that I wouldn't say line officers even up to captain, but once you become a battalion chief and all the way to chief of department, you move. I think I have to agree with you 100% that, because there's a lot more on a chief's shoulders than just the title of being chief of department and being maybe taking a scene once every 7, 8, 9 months themselves. But there's so much more in their job requirement, what they have to do, that they really probably don't get to think about their firefighting days as much as they have to do with their administrative days. And as you said, there's not a lot of help. It's only going on six. See, we're in our 7th season. So basically 6 years ago that the real Firefighter Cancer Initiative was launched across North America. And we've got, I'd say, the vast majority of firefighters, the majority, I think, have bought in and understand that this is one of the things we face in this job. And it's changed a lot, from the days when Brad and I started, when there was real wood furniture.
Right.
And the only stuffing in a furniture was Kapok. So you didn't have butane products or benzene products in there. Where we had I think it was 5 to 8 minute incipient stage back in those days for us to get there. Now we're lucky with a 3 or 4 minute incipient stage. And we really can get there at that level. So now it's only been maybe 3 years, 3.5 years that we've been pushing the Firefighter Behavioral Health Initiative. But I think I've seen in this time and through guests and social media, a lot more firefighters are resistant to behavioral health initiative than they are for the cancer initiative. They accept that. They understand that. And they're making those changes. They're not taking their gear in the house anymore. We're doing yes, our own gear is poisoning us. Yeah, it goes back to our days. I started in 1977, and when Dr. Graham Peasley from Notre Dame did the tests on the bunker gear, the nuclear examinations, he used new and used gear dating back to 77. So now I know that my first set of gear that I carried in my car, brought it up to the stairs in my home, had the PFAS and PFOS in it all that time. So I was lucky in that first department where we had gads of AFFF. I never got any on me. I got a little bit on my boots one time, and that was it. That was my exposure to AFFF. But the PFAS for 8 years nonstop, I was wearing the bunker gear. So why is it that we're doing very well with the cancer initiative? We have firefighters, career, volunteer, part pay, taking their IDs with them when they go to see, if they're going to see their own doctor. They say, I want you to know I'm a firefighter, I'm a volunteer firefighter. I've been exposed to these kind of things. Would you keep an eye on me for this? You got to tell them. So why do we have success there, but we're still having such pushback on the Behavioral Health Initiative? Chief, we'll start with you on this one, please.
My first thing that comes to mind is emotion. I think emotion is attached to behavioral health, and firefighters are known, and a lot of people are known to think of as emotions as a bad thing. And when I say emotions, it's not being emotional, it's having an emotion. So everyone has an emotions every single moment of life, but for some reason we bury them. And I would say emotion is definitely attached to mental health, behavioral health, and we're just not quite there to be that vulnerable to express the emotion side of things. That would be my top thing, I think. I think emotion would be my number one. And if we keep this conversation going, people are going to say, well, it's not a big deal to show your sadness, to show your anger, to show your happiness, to show your joy. Those are all things we should be promoting. We're not robots. I think emotion would be, and I think we're making headway. I know in Canada, the conversation is much more regular than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. We're talking about, there's conferences now that are just strictly on mental health for firefighters. And I think that's making huge strides, just like the old seat belts. It's, it's common now and right on the back of the tailboard. We will get there. And with people like yourself and Brad, and we're just kind of spreading that word and making it okay to talk, okay to be vulnerable, okay to have an emotion come up.
And it's funny because we show our emotions with our patients, with our victims. We take care of them. We say, don't worry, we're going to help you. Relax. We'll take care of everything. You just take it easy. So we're showing compassion for the people we care for in our communities. We just need to turn that around and show that compassion to the person in the mirror, right? Brad?
Well, I was just sorry, if I could just add one thing that goes onto that is I don't think we show enough passion to ourselves. And that kind of just what you said, the mirror, we need a little bit more compassion for ourselves, that we are a human being first, not a firefighter first. So.
Yeah. We often react out of instinct. I know there was just 2 weeks ago, yesterday, I was coming out of a store parking lot onto a main road, and I was the second car, and the lady in front of me, who should have stopped at the stop line getting out of the driveway from the store, decided she was going to go across the road all the way without stopping. And sure enough, she got T-boned on my side coming down. So I happened to be next car, threw my emergency lights on, grabbed my BLS pack, came out and started, doing aid. My back problems, my knee problems, my thyroid, none of that made I didn't even think about it. I knew what I had to do, and that was to assess the two drivers, find out which one needed more. I called in 911, told them I was a former firefighter, gave them the setup on the amount of damage on the two vehicles. What I saw initially, I told them I hadn't assessed the patient yet. She said, okay, we'll start rescue coming that way and police. And, I started doing the assessment, and I had one who was hurt worse than the other. So I started working on her. First officer came by and he says, are you still on the job? I said, no, I'm just helping out. And he says, please continue. Don't stop. Rescue's on their way. And the station's right around the corner here from my house. So it was right around the corner from the house anyway. And they showed up, and the guy asked me the same question. Are you still on the job? I said, no, that's my vest. I own the vest, my bag. He says, I'll be right back to get the bullet. Just keep doing it. So, I told her what was going to happen. We're going to package her up, and because that can be very scary, as we all know, for a patient when you have to package them up for an extrication, and put a KED in a collar on them and stuff like that. They get all upset. We're just telling them, we're doing it for safety measure only. We're not saying that you are injured that way. We just want to take care of you and make sure. And then he came over, he said, I gave him the bullet, and he says, thanks, man. I'm just so glad you were here, happened to be here when it happened. And, my family, I've done this over 200 times. And, do I pay for it afterward? Yeah. But I wouldn't change it. I mean, my back is, if I'm not wearing my little device, that nerve stimulator, if I'm not wearing it that day, and, I don't feel anything. But once that adrenaline seeps out of the bloodstream, I remember all the pain that my body can offer. But to me, it's just who I am. I might be almost 71, but I'm still a firefighter at heart. And that's not going to, and I'm going to carry it with me to the fire station in the big sky as well. So, all right. So Brad, let's get your take on what you see as the slowdown of why we can't put the behavioral health on in the high-speed interstate rather than still on a 2-lane country road.
Well, I'd have to say, my memoirs book is partly about that, because we can all easily recall the tragedy that we tragedies that we experience, and the firefighter or fire chief, in Arjuna's case, even though you may be injured, it's in our psyche that we still want to serve. So a lot of times, I think maybe part of the reluctance is for having these conversations that you maybe will be taken out of the game. And as far as the book goes, that was kind of an impetus for me, because I had witnessed tons of tragedy and explosions and friends passing on from cancer. But that was only part of the story. The good part of the story is, along that way, we influenced and saved many lives. And we supported our brothers that had cancer. And I know in my case, sure, it was an injury, but that doesn't mean you're stuck there. It's a post-traumatic stress injury, and partly because you're reacting normally to abnormal events. But in many cases, with the proper support, as Arjuna said, you can turn that to post-traumatic growth. And at the time when I was really in the heat of battle, we were having explosions and fatal calls and whatnot. To me, it seemed it was very overwhelming. However, a few years later, you get to be a little bit wiser, and you realize, for me anyway, you were getting an incredible experience that most young guys may never see. So yeah, it was hardships and it affected me, but you have to learn to have the conversations and grow from there.
Right. Great point. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break because I want to lay this foundation first with our guests, because it's so important. And if you're a regular listener or viewer, you know that we take this whole concept in an important manner. And actually, before we run to the break, I've shared the story on the podcast before, but I want to share it with our guests today to show that even back early in the day, my first chief was the kind of leader who really knew how to take care of his firefighters. And here's this quick story. I was on about 8 months, and we got toned out for a working house fire. And I made it down to the station, and one of the other volunteers, not my good friend, but another volunteer who was voted in the night we was in the other jump seat. And the captain, as we were coming, we could see the loom up, and the captain said, "All right, Steve, I want you to pull the line, the nozzle, have so-and-so pull the spaghetti, and then we'll have the second engine come in and hit the hydrant. You guys just go in." And I said to my colleague, I said, "Okay, just make sure that, you pull it out straight and then come right behind me and we'll be all set." And we got there, it was cooking pretty well. It was from the back from the seaside, and it was a utility room, laundry room, and just off the kitchen. So it was cooking really well when we got there. And so the captain brought me up, and I had water in the hose, bled the water, bled the air out, and had it ready with water. And he said, "Okay, let's hit it." So we hit it, the fog stream, got it down, waved it around, took about 7-8 minutes. We knocked the whole thing down. So closed the bail, and captain said, "Good job, guys. You did a great job with that. Great knockdown." And I turned around to thank my guy behind me. It was somebody else. So I turned to the captain. I said, "What happened to so-and-so?" And he says, "Oh, you go talk with the chief." I said, "Is he all right?" He goes, "Oh, he's fine. Don't worry." So I went to the chief afterward, and I said, "What happened to so-and-so?" He said, "He's okay. But when he got behind you that close to the fire, he was not comfortable going into attacking that fire." I said, "You're not going to let him force him out of the department?" He goes, "Oh, hell no. No, he's going to do ladders and other stuff. He'll be straightening the line and stuff for us on calls. He's going to be a regular member of the department. We're not going to set him up for entry yet." And I stopped for a minute. I said, "Oh my God," I was thinking the worst was going to happen. But the chief knew that, we were a volunteer department. We at that time, there wasn't any dearth of members, but every member was valuable, and he didn't want to. He had the common sense not to just dump this guy because he couldn't do that. He said, "Yeah, we'll find another job for him. He can still be an active and contributing member of our department." And that's what I had not seen from that time forward for the next 30, 35 years or so till that. All right. If you're watching the video, you're not going to see anything different. If you're listening to the audio, well, we're going to take a little break. There'll be a few messages, and then we're going to come right back with our guest, Brad Davidson, and Chief. Oh God, I want to get it right, Chief. Arjuna.
Yes.
Arjuna George. Okay. And we'll be right back, folks, right after these words. As always, please stay tuned. Hello, and welcome back to this episode of 511 Task Force. I'm your host, Steve Green, and with me are my guests today from our wonderful and beautiful, if you haven't seen some of the great scenery up in Canada, God, you've got to get up there. You've got to get up there. But from Canada, my guests, Bradley Davidson and Chief Arjuna George. And we're going to talk right now in this second section. If you're tuning in late for any reason, go back and please watch the first segment, because they lay a magnificent foundation about our real topics today. Yes, we're going to talk about their books, but it's the impetus and the desire behind those books that we're going to talk about now in this second part of the podcast. So we're going to ask Chief George to talk about his book, Burnt Around the Edges. And Chief, let's have it.
Sounds good. Thank you. Yeah, Burnt Around the Edges. Kind of initiated from kind of like what Brad said originally about coaching. I was getting coached myself, so it was not my idea originally, Brad, to mention that. I actually had that experience to myself, so I was sharing it. Yeah, so I was getting coached during my transition of burnout, operational organizational burnout in 2020. I was on time off, sick leave to kind of recoup and see what my next chapter in life was. And through coaching, I was challenged the exact same way I challenged Brad, and said, she essentially said, "What's one thing you really want to do in the rest of your life that you haven't done before?" And I said, "Well, definitely write a book is one of the tops." And she said, "Well, what's holding you back? Why aren't you doing that?" And I said, "Well, one day when I'm, in 60s, 70s, I'll write my book." "Well, why don't you start today?" And so that day I started writing Burnt Around the Edges. I actually had the title that day as well, and it didn't change, didn't
Wow.
move. Because, and how I describe it is, I felt like I was burnt around the edges, but not fully cooked through. I felt like I still, and to this day, I have a fire inside of me to do more in life, to do more of service. Um, so I felt like I was burnt around the edges, but still had a good fire inside of me that was healthy. So compared to being fully burnt out. And so Burnt Around the Edges is kind of my story, coming from my childhood, maybe my first traumas that I experienced, up through joining the fire service. And it attributes to quite a few things. I was the first career firefighter in our organization. I was the youngest that they've ever had. I was the youngest fire chief they've ever had. So I had a lot of challenges that I was up against that I was game for, but they also took a toll on my own well-being. So going through the years, and then kind of goes through the last few chapters are about my recovery process and how I came from being burnt around the edges to, I feel like I'm thriving today versus how I was in 2-3 years ago. And a lot of that is I was a guinea pig. I felt I tried every modality, every technique I could try to find out there to kind of reset my nervous system. I think that was the biggest issue with myself, was my nervous system was completely fried. I was on high alert, sympathetic, kind of fight or flight for probably a decade, unfortunately, and with no way to rebalance myself. I definitely experienced trauma through my life, but I was never diagnosed with PTSD. It was organizational burnout is what I was diagnosed with. And that came down to, all the stuff that happens outside of the emergency calls. And as a fire chief, it kind of definitely weighed on me of all those responsibilities that I had, and my own perception of what my role was. Because I honestly felt like the whole community, the whole fire service, their families, their safety was on my shoulders 24/7. And especially during COVID, that even 10x'd it. So I really felt that I had huge weight on my shoulders that I just didn't know how to take off and relax. Once again, that was perception, because that's not reality, that I didn't have the whole island and the whole community, everyone on my shoulder all the time. That was not true, but that's how I felt. And then, so the book kind of goes through all those different modalities that I tried, and it kind of covers each one. And it's kind of like a menu. When you're reading the book, go through it, and you might pick 2-3 things that are there, but it's not meant you have to do all of them to recover from burnout. Probably more than one, because one is just going to start working on stuff, but you really need to have a bit of a package on your recovery through burnout. And really, burnout is a nervous system dysregulation.
Right.
That's what it comes down to. And then the last chapter is what we can do next, and how can we improve the fire service to, be more aware about burnout. I think we talk a lot about PTSD, which is super critical, and we're coming a long way in that. But through the conferences, the workshops, the training that I did on mental health, it seemed burnout and organizational stress was often missed or just briefly talked about compared to traumatic stress. So I think they're equal in importance, and probably there's even more exposure to organizational stress, because every single firefighter experiences that
Right.
in an organization. So the WHO declared it a kind of a worldwide emergency, but still have not classified it as an injury. So the World Health Organization. And so we're making steps there. They've recognized it as a huge increase, especially since COVID, but it's not classified as an injury at this time yet. So yeah, that's my book, Burnt Around the Edges. It's kind of like a guidebook / biography. I really wanted to support the reader, whoever's reading it. And a lot of the feedback that I've gotten so far is, you've just written a book that sounds like my life. It sounds like I'm reading a book that's looking into a mirror. And to me, that's worth the whole journey of writing the book. It took 2 years to write. Definitely a journey to complete it. There was plenty of times I wanted to give up, but I was writing it for my own therapy to start with, my own kind of processing and just kind of getting everything in my mind down on paper. And probably about 90% of the way through, I almost packed it in because I felt that I had everything that I wanted to get out of the book for my own personal recovery. It had done its job. It had allowed me to process and work through all my history and my traumas that I recognized and my big stressors in life. But then I said, if I can help one person, I'm going to finish the next 10% and get it published. So it was a grind. I actually had to confine myself in a hotel for 3 days to finish that last 10% because I just knew that I wouldn't if I forced myself. So went on a little writing retreat, which was amazing. Definitely going to do that for the next book, and just allowed me to finish that last 10%. And so grateful that I could do that. And I think there's about 500 copies sold already, and came out on October 31st. So I'm
That's
pretty
wonderful.
happy about the movement that it's starting.
That's great. But by the way, have you either of you gentlemen aware of 911lifestyle.com? Andy Clark, I think is her name. She's in the Toronto area.
Oh.
She,
Doesn't
I had her on a couple of years ago, and she specializes in helping both police, actually not both, I shouldn't say both, police, her husband's a Toronto police officer, I believe, fire and EMS workers, to how to decompress, to, especially you're still active, how to do your job and love the job that you're doing, but understanding that, yes, you have challenges with those jobs. It's internal, external, et cetera, you're going to meet. She's pretty good. It's 911lifestyle.com if you ever want to look at it.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was very interesting because I really had not heard at that point of anybody specifically focusing on just our first responders, better health. And of course, now on top, we had all the struck bys that both are, I'm not sure if you're getting it as bad as we are down here, but we can lose basically a firefighter a week for struck bys by our D drivers. And D stands for drunk, drugged, drowsy, distracted, disgruntled, disturbed, disrespectful, drag racing, driverless, and dangerous. Oh, also in some cases, dead. So we're on a big push. We're going to having a little roundtable in a couple of weeks with people from the Respond to Safety Institute here in Maryland, I believe they're based, or Northern Virginia, and then from a company Hass Alert, they've developed a new thing that will alert once an emergency vehicle turns its lights on. It will send out a signal to your infotainment system in the cars. So whether you're using Google Maps, Apple Maps, Waze, they're already on Waze, but you're going to get these notices electronically to help us notify, since a lot of those drivers say, well, I didn't see it move over sign. Well, that's funny because they're on every 2 miles on every major highway across the United States, at least. They're there. But it's taken a big toll. So this will be another way for us to look at not just what we're taking care of other people, but sometimes the price it costs us to do that. That's one of my wife's, since she knows I'm very, very much into this topic, and we've done a webinar on it already and done another couple of podcasts, that she's not happy that I still, if I'm the first one there and there's nobody else there to help, I'm going to stop and help. Just who it is and what we do. Brad, let's listen a little more about your book. I know yours was more a little bit retrospective, like mine was, Just kind of
Yeah.
telling my story getting into the fire. But yours, you have a much longer career and a lot more to talk about.
Well, it's my, of course, I attended some major events, but it's like I was saying, it's a memoir style, um, and describes my growth in the department as a rookie and the fatal fires we went to, and it when Arjuna was speaking, it rang a bell with me too. We I think organizational burnout was played a big part because we were not just responding, but then in trying to prevent the same fires from happening. Uh, Sometimes faced real tough adversity, and at the end of the day, uh, the way I explained it to some managers, at the end of the day, all I get is a headache. And my passion is that everybody that we're involved with goes home at the end of the day. The easiest fire to fight is the one you can prevent from happening, right? And a lot of the fires and calls we went to were preventable. So yeah, I think our organizational. Now that I think back on it, our organizational burnout was played a big part. But during the time that we had the most calls on the industrial fire side, uh, I also had many personal things going on. Like our firstborn had, we thought she had a brain tumor. So that took a few weeks and months to sort out. And then we had a second child, and she had congenital pyloric stenosis.
Oh, wow.
So that meant traveling to a major medical center and getting that sorted out. And then my youngest daughter, she at 2 years of age, she contracted scalded skin syndrome.
What was it called?
Ruby, scalded skin syndrome, where a virus and a bacteria get together and burn off the top layer of the skin of the whole body.
Oh my.
So you're having organizational problems, you're experiencing tragedies, your personal life, is sometimes in response mode, I guess that you could call it. And even after one of the major incidents I had, when you say decompress, after one of the major incidents I had, then happened on a night shift. And that morning I jumped into the motorhome and we traveled to go camping. And that was I was hoping to be able to decompress. But we're 40 miles out of a community that we didn't know that well at a camping site. And my daughter experienced an asthma attack. I was still in hypervigilant mode. And now my daughter experiences a medical emergency while we were camping. So you like firefighters, night and day, they're always firefighters, right? Whether it's your family, somebody else's family.
Right.
And I think that was part of it. And Arjuna could probably speak more about this. One of the things that I was experiencing too, being not able to decompress, was I had terrible sleep hygiene. And that plays a big part on recovery, I feel. But I described the beginning of my career when we had many bad calls, but the whole time I was getting experience that you literally don't realize that you're getting. And I had some near miss calls, and one particularly at the major event, and I had an intuition that something was going to go south. And a small voice spoke to me and said, "Brad, you need to turn on your heel and double time it out of here." So I went back to our dispatch office, and I just set my lunch beside me, and the phone calls started coming in from the place I was just at. There'd been a series of explosions. So and living in a smaller community, a lot of the people injured in that were my friends and coworkers. So I describe that, and then I move on to cancer prevention, and and I have a few guests that come in and give their expertise. And I describe a friend of mine, Mark. He had to leave the fire service. We experienced a lot of the same calls and a lot of the same interests. And Mark, after he moved out west by necessity, uh, he got a cancerous brain tumor. And so I think it was his first surgery. I nicknamed Mark Fearless after a book by Adam Brown by about a Navy SEAL. So Mark was laying in his hospital bed in Edmonton, and the doctor wouldn't refer to Mark by his name. He kept calling him statistically speaking this, and statistically speaking that. And it had been a few years since Mark was a firefighter. And Mark interrupted him and said, "You know, Doc," he says, "I'm no statistic. I'm a firefighter." He says, "Do what you have to do, and let's get moving here." He says, "Because when you're done, there'll be no tag on my toe. I'll be walking out of here, and my name's Mark." And that was his first surgery. And well, he was supposed to be recuperating. He came home, and I learned that they shot a moose. And each time he came home to Flin Flon, we'd have coffee and talk about his surgeries and whatnot. And the one time I was teasing him, he came in to visit, and by this time the nickname Fearless had stuck. I said, "Boy, Mark, they even give you a souvenir because he had a red gnarly scar here." And he just said, "Just makes me look tougher." But Mark coached another young man in our community that was also a firefighter that also had brain cancer. And Mark eventually lost his battle with brain cancer, but not before we were involved with a rescue for him and his family. Again, he was supposed to be recuperating after his last surgery, and he got stranded on a remote lake about 50 air miles from here. And I just happened to be working when the call come in. And the guy I was working with was a fire chief of a nearby community. And he just put his head in his hands and he looked up and he said, "We got a problem." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "Mark and his family are stuck in slush, and we got like 2 or 3 hours of daylight left." And Mark was post-surgery, and I believe his dad was post-surgery too. But I think it makes for a good read, and it spurred me to really go after the cancer prevention in the fire service, because we've all known somebody, and now as the years go by, it seems to be more and more common, and it is, and in many cases, I still feel that it's preventable. As long as the younger generation can be just as aggressive at preventing cancer as they are in the nozzle.
That's a great point. Is that most of these, unless they're just in a year or two, most of these firefighters have already seen either somebody in their department or somebody in the neighborhood department who was diagnosed with cancer. And we hope, and I've had Diane Cotter has been on a couple of times. We've become very, very close friends, even though we've never met. And it's like you and me. I mean, we never met face to face, but I still consider you one of my dear friends and one of my first best supporters when I took that first step off the ledge to do this podcast. But we need, I think we're making headway with the newer guys, maybe 10 years and less, are seeing what is happening to, for the most part, to them, firefighters with more experience than they do with the cancer issue. And I think we're seeing, from some of the feedback I get with our cancer initiative down here, is that we're seeing a more ownership of it by younger firefighters and realizing, okay, I'm not planning on getting it, but I'm going to do what I can to make sure that I'm safe, my family's safe, and my brothers and sisters are safe in the station when we're there. And look, we can see in station designs that a lot of those are changing now to prevent creating smaller bunk rooms, have decon areas specifically. So when you first pull in with the apparatus, there's a place to decon the apparatus, decon the gear, everything like that. So we're not passing this stuff on. Do not enter rooms that if you have gear on, you can't go into those rooms, stuff like that. Positive pressure ventilation. We're seeing now a greater acceptance, but we have to still fine tune it to more of the individuals who, in Hebrew, the word gever means hero or heroic. But we say that too many people can have a gever complex and think they're heroes and think they're impenetrable and immortal. And in this job, that's the wrong opinion to have about life in general.
Yeah.
But if you're a firefighter, you need to know that we're not immortal. And from something that we can't even see, that's too small for us to even see with our own eyes, that can change our lives around, to falling through a floor into a basement with a working fire. Those incidents are still going to happen. And they change the lives of everybody involved, whether you're the family it's your family's house that's burning, or it's a firefighter who falls through, or the firefighter gets cancer, or Aunt Mabel gets cancer. Those things are going to affect your life. And it's how we deal with them and how we make ourselves stronger internally and emotionally. And I think both of your books are sharing that, because we're not ashamed to say that we're not heroes. We're not ashamed to say that we're not better than anybody else. Some people are accountants, and some people go to banks, and some people want to be refuse collection. And we chose to be firefighters, career or volunteer, but we made that choice. Nobody forced us into it. We chose it. But the difference is that I think every firefighter, every police officer, and every paramedic and EMT has a little different spark in each of us that says, you can help by doing this. And a lot of people get that spark, but some of them just wave their hand to blow it out and let the smoke dissipate. Whereas 3 of us and millions of others say, no, that spark's going to be who I am. I'm going to do something. And your book says that, and your book chief says that. And we've all come from we've all had difficult situations. And I would venture to say that most of the people that today, maybe with 8 to 10 years or more, have all been at some way or another in a similar situation, or situations, plural, and do their best to get through it as safely and as quickly as possible, and to get on to who we are. And that is, we are protectors of our communities. That's what we signed on for. That's what that little oath says. I will protect the lives and property of my community to the best of my ability. No one says we're perfect, and we sure as hell aren't going to claim it. Okay? Can't even make the hydrant connection. You got to practice a couple more times, drill. Okay, that's fine. Do it. But we can learn if we open ourselves up. So that's how we opened this podcast, was talking about learning. And everything we've discussed today, learning avenue that we can take. And that we hope that we've been on that journey, and now we're trying to share that journey with others so they can ride along with us and learn about it maybe before it happens to them, so they're better prepared. I have no doubt that both of your books, mine's more of a telling a story, but you guys are sharing intimate details about your careers and what you faced. And you don't see that a lot in leadership books and tactics books. It's usually very cut and dry. These books are different. And these books, a read of each or both of these books just might change a current firefighter's life for the better and earlier on. And if we can, I guess, help them stay off those dark highways that we've been down a couple of times, each of us, then we'll hope and pray that they'll have a strong and happier career. Yes, there's going to be challenges. No one ever going to say they're not going to be. But we can just hope and pray that they'll have good, safe, and healthy careers by learning more from these two books. So, Chief, tell them where they can get a hold of Burnt Around the Edges, please, and then we'll have Brad promote his where it's going to be. Where it's going to be. I know it's not published officially yet, right? Not published
That's
yet,
right.
Brad? Yeah, okay, good.
Published just yet, yeah.
Okay. Chief?
All right. So, Burnt Around the Edges can be got at www.burntaroundtheedges.com. You can get a signed copy right from myself, or you can go to Amazon or Apple or Google Play and download an ebook or order a hard copy from Amazon. So available lots of ways. But if you want a signed copy, it's burntaroundtheedges.com. Happy to ship you one out. Sometimes even faster than Amazon shipping. So
That's great. That's great. And Brad, what's going to be the name of your book?
My book is Flames of the Fire, Firefighting Amidst Explosions.
Wow.
Named after some of the explosions that we fought fires when we responded to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can't thank you both enough. This came together fast, but man, I couldn't ask for a better interview and better program to share with our viewers and listeners, because this is down and dirty in the trenches. It's all nice to just get up and pull a hose and spray a little water and put the fire out and pack up and go home. These books, these stories, this podcast ain't about that stuff. We're talking about the real, what the other side, what's behind the curtain. Let's take the old Wizard of Oz example and say these books are showing what's behind the curtain, or what can be. Couldn't say what should, but what can be behind the curtain. And we need to do that, just as we pre-plan. We pre-plan buildings, pre-plan homes. When a contract comes in, starts building a whole new tract of home, we pre-plan those. They have to meet the fire marshal's requirements, stuff like that. Why can't we do the same thing for ourselves? Why can't we take care of ourselves in the same way that we're so adamant and so anxious to take care of our communities? Because as I close so many times this podcast, if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody else.
That's true, yeah.
Yep.
So
first you responder.
Yeah,
You got to be a first you responder. So take
That's
care
it.
of yourself. Yeah.
that's it. First you responder. That's a great way of putting it, Steve.
Good point.
Yeah.
I have
yes,
a website, proudlyRDavidson.com. I'm on all the social media channels.
All right. So that's going to be, we have Burn Around the Edges by Chief Arjuna Raj and, oh my God, I can't believe it. Arjuna Raj. Oh, I did say it right. Arjuna Raj, George. And Brad Davidson's book is going to be, again, Brad?
Flames of the Fire.
Flames of the Fire. And that'll be out approximately, when are you expecting?
May, I'm expecting.
May. Okay. So we'll look at that, and we'll put it on the website as well when they're out. But gentlemen, I can't thank you enough. Like I said, this was fast and furious, but what a great an inspirational program you've provided for us today. I think that
An honor.
so many, the honor is I'm going to be God's honest truth, gentlemen. The honor is ours. It really is. That you guys would come on here and talk about these books, and talk about your own personal challenges and struggles in the fire service. And you know what? We still love it. We still love who we are as firefighters. And that's the key. You can have problems. It doesn't mean you're a bad firefighter or a bad person. It just means you're human.
Right.
And
Yep.
and the three of us here today, we're all human. We bleed like everybody else, and we scrape our knees with like everybody else, and we have headaches, and we have family problems, and we have, I can't believe what the grocery cost this month is. But you know what? We just move on, because
Yep.
that's who we are. And look at your strong side, and then work to help your weaker side. And that first step is admitting that you have a weaker side. And when you do, you become stronger just from that first realization. That's what somebody told me a number of years ago when I had a real problem after I lost my dad. So, gentlemen, thank you so much. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
And sharing your knowledge and your wisdom and your experiences. And I really do appreciate it. And I know that our viewers and listeners will as well. So, folks, if you're watching the video, this is going to conclude this broadcast. If you are listening to the audio, well, yes, we'll be back with some words right after these messages. And to those leaving, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week with another new podcast and video cast. Remember, stay safe, stay well, and let's make sure everyone goes home. Take care.